We live on a cul-de-sac outside Charlotte, the kind of neighborhood where the mailboxes match and the HOA newsletter uses too many exclamation points. Our house is a two-story with a porch swing that I swore we'd use every evening and then mostly didn't because real life is homework folders and missing soccer cleats and chicken thawed too late. On Thursday nights, the whole street smells like charcoal and dryer sheets. On Friday mornings, trash cans roll to the curb in a sad parade. The week my husband turned 40, the air felt like wet linen and the magnolias were throwing perfume like confetti. I had a plan. A quiet dinner at home with the kids, his favorite bourbon chocolate cake, my mother's recipe, always a little lopsided, and a stack of cards they'd made with crooked hearts and stick figure confetti. We hadn't booked a sitter. Money felt tight with swim lessons and daycare and the leak in the upstairs bathroom that reappeared like a ghost. But I'd ironed a tablecloth, and the kids had practiced singing Happy Birthday without fighting over the cha-cha-chas. It felt like enough. He came home from the train wearing the blue suit that makes his shoulders look broader. He works in finance uptown, an office with glass walls, a lanyard badge, numbers that glow on screens. The kids barreled into him at the door, wrapping their arms around his waist, the 4-year-old's curls stuck to his forehead with sweat. He kissed the tops of their heads and smiled at me, tired around the edges. "Smells amazing," he said, loosening his tie. "You didn't have to do all this." "I did," I said, and meant it. "Happy birthday." We ate on the good plates. The 7-year-old told a joke he'd practiced, got the punchline wrong, and we laughed anyway. The little one insisted on passing the salt like a crown jewel. During cake, a little bloom of bourbon hit the back of my throat, and I thought, this is a good night. Not fancy, not Instagram, but ours. After bedtimes, 2 bathroom trips, 3 one last sip of water, 1 meltdown over a missing stuffed fox, we stood side by side at the kitchen sink. He dried, I washed. The window over the sink framed a strip of night and our reflection, soft and domestic, and a little ghostly. He set down a plate, cleared his throat, and said, almost casually, "Can I ask you something without you reacting?" "Depends on the something," I said, flicking a soap bubble off my knuckle. He looked at me, then back at the dish towel in his hands. "A hall pass," he said, "for my birthday." I laughed, ready to tease him for the clumsy joke. He didn't laugh. "I'm serious," he said quickly, words crowding each other. "Just once. One time. It wouldn't mean—" He searched the ceiling for a word. "It wouldn't mean anything. It could, I don't know, spice things up. Guys do it. It's a thing." A thing. He said it like he was ordering a limited-time appetizer. I put the plate down very carefully because my hands had gone cold and I didn't trust my grip. "You want permission to sleep with someone else?" I repeated, to make sure we were both hearing the same sentence. "Just once," he said. "A hall pass. We've been together 10 years. I'm turning 40. I love you. I love our family. I'm just—" He made a helpless gesture. "I'm restless." The dishwasher hummed like a distant plane. A clock I never noticed ticked, suddenly loud. I felt the shaky hilarity of something that is not funny at all. "No," I said, "absolutely not." He took a breath like he was about to wade into cold water. "I thought you might say that." He tried a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I just figured asking couldn't hurt." "It hurts," I said. "The asking hurts." He looked genuinely confused, which was almost worse than malice. "We'd set rules," he said. "No emotions. Just—" He wiggled his fingers in the air, as if the unsayable might take a shape there. "I'm not saying anything is wrong with us." "You are literally saying something is wrong with us," I said, and my voice did a small, humiliating tremble on literally. "You're saying you want to sleep with someone who isn't me, and you want me to bless it." "I'm saying I don't want to blow up our life," he shot back, a little too fast. "I'm trying to be transparent." I stared at the window and saw us superimposed on the night, two people in a kitchen that could be anybody's. His hairline, my ponytail, the smudge of chocolate on my sleeve, the world's most ordinary betrayal beginning like a paper cut. "This is insulting," I said, "and disgusting, frankly." He flinched, then straightened. "I knew you'd get mad." "You asked me to co-sign my own humiliation," I said. "Congratulations, I'm mad." It escalated. Of course it did. The way these conversations know how to grow teeth. He said I'd changed after the kids, that I was always touched out, that our intimacy had gotten routine. I said the routine had a name, parenthood, and maybe he could pick up a grocery order once in a while if he wanted more energy in the bed we both fell into like corpses. He said he was only trying to be honest. I said honesty would have been, "I'm struggling," not, "Can I go have sex with a stranger as a birthday present?" It ended the way it usually does, with me crying in the laundry room, sitting on the dryer because it's the only place in the house where the fan is loud enough to swallow the sound. He came to the doorway, put his hand on the frame. "I'm sorry," he said. "It was a dumb idea. Midlife crisis brain. Forget I said it." I didn't say, "It's already said." I didn't say, "I can't unknow that you want this." I nodded, like a ceasefire. He slept badly that night. I could feel it in the bed, how the mattress transmitted his restlessness like a telegram. At 2 a.m., I went downstairs for water and stood in the dark kitchen, my palm flat against the cool granite, listening to the house hum, the refrigerator, the AC, the small animal sounds of a life. I tried to picture his imaginary one time. It refused to be imaginary. My mind queued up faces of women we both knew, mom friends from the bus stop, the barista who always drew leaves in my foam, my best friend Claire, who'd stopped by earlier with a cake and a joke about crossing into the old man club. I banished the thought so hard my jaw ached. He apologized again in the morning. He did the school drop-off, came back with iced coffee, kissed my temple. He said it had been a joke that landed wrong, that he'd felt panicky about the number 40, that he'd read some dumb article about keeping things exciting and let it burrow in his head. "I'm not that guy," he said, eyes on mine. "I swear." I wanted to believe him. Believing him was easier than replotting my life. So I said, "Okay," which is a sentence that can mean forgiveness or just exhaustion. For a few days, we moved around the sore spot the way you move around a bruise. He took the kids for bike rides. I cleaned out the hall closet in a purge I couldn't explain and made 3 trips to Goodwill. We returned library books on time. I baked muffins. The mundane kept rolling, and I let it carry me like a slow river. On his birthday proper, the kids and I taped a paper banner across the doorway, "Happy 40" in bubble letters, the 0 colored in confetti dots. Claire stopped by at 6 with a bakery box and a candle shaped like a question mark. Claire has been my best friend since freshman orientation. 2 girls in 2 white sneakers, paired for an icebreaker because our last names sat us side by side. She knows my coffee order, the name of my 5th grade teacher, the dumb thing I said at our wedding rehearsal dinner that still makes me wince. We have seen each other sick and triumphant and bored and broke. She hugged me in my messy kitchen, whispered, "You doing okay?" in that private friend cadence. I squeezed her hand, let the squeeze mean 100 things, and said, "I will be." The evening was almost sweet. After cake, Claire rinsed plates while I sent the kids to brush their teeth. She teased him about Big 4-0. He rolled his eyes with the performative grumpiness of a man who still likes his own birthday. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said she'd text me tomorrow about the school fundraiser sign-up. I watched her taillights swim away in the dark and felt that familiar ballast of having a person who knows your kitchen drawers. We tucked the kids, and he stood in the doorway of their room, looking at their sleeping faces like he wished he could fold himself small and crawl into that easy innocence. He looked older than he had that morning. Maybe it was the candlelight, or how shadows are honest. "It was a good day," he said. "It was," I said, and let myself believe we'd moved past the stupid ask. 2 days later, on Monday, I was paying the cable bill during nap time. the house wrapped in that fragile silence you don't dare jostle, when I saw it. A pending credit card charge from the Uptown Marriott, the one with the glass elevators that make you lightheaded. 2 nights earlier. An amount that made my mouth go dry. I told myself it must be a mistake. A double charge from some work lunch, a hold for a canceled event, something boring. I checked the card login again, then his email, the way we both have done for years when the other is driving or wrestling a kid into pajamas. The search bar blinked at me. I typed Marriott. A confirmation populated, polite and damning. Reservation confirmed. 1 night, King. His name. His personal email, the check-in date, 2 days after his birthday. The email had been forwarded to another address. My stomach recognized the address before my eyes did. Claire. For a moment, my body forgot how to do body things. I had to remind myself to inhale. The cursor hovered over the little down arrow to expand the thread. When I clicked, the world narrowed to a thin, bright tunnel. You sure? Her, the night of his birthday, sent from her phone, no capitalization, a smiley I'd recognize anywhere. Room under my name. Same plan. Him. Okay, what time? Her. A tiny flurry of logistics, the kind of banal phrases you use to ferry yourself toward a catastrophe. I got up too fast, and the room tilted a little. The dishwasher was running. I'd loaded it an hour before. The hum became a roar. I stood at the sink with my hands on the counter and stared into the backyard as if the grass could tell me it wasn't true. A squirrel did something squirrely on the fence. Somewhere, a leaf blower bullied the air. I took my phone and sat on the floor next to the pantry, where the kids hide when we play sardines. I read the thread again, as if a second pass would reveal it as a prank, an AI deepfake, a hallucination from too little sleep. My phone screen dimmed in my shaking hand. He walked in at 6:40 that night, jacket over his arm, tie already tugged loose. The kids barreled toward him as they always do, and I had a feral, shameful flash of wanting to physically bar him from touching them with those hands. I hated that thought. I hated him for putting it in my head. "Hey," he said carefully, reading my face in a second. He is good at reading screens, numbers, rooms. Me too. He set his bag down slowly. "What's wrong?" I held up the phone. "Why did you book a hotel room on Saturday night?" I asked, voice steady in the way a frozen lake is steady. "And why did you forward the confirmation to Claire?" He went very still. He's a talker, my husband. Words are his currency, and the quiet felt like a power outage. "It's not," he began, then stopped. "It's not what you think." "What exactly do I think?" I said. "Because it looks like you asked me for permission to cheat on me, didn't get it, and then did it anyway with my best friend. We just—" He made that searching gesture again, but whatever word he wanted did not exist in English. "I booked the room to see how it felt. Like a test." I didn't— "Don't," I said. And something in my voice must have startled him because he flinched like a dog who's finally noticed the fence is electric. "Don't insult me by calling it a thought experiment. Why did you forward it to Claire?" His face opened and closed, shutters in a storm. He swallowed. "We'd been texting," he said. He did not meet my eyes. "It was stupid. I was stupid. Did you sleep with her?" I asked, and the world telescoped to his answer. He nodded, barely. "Once," he said, as if scarcity could offer mercy. It meant nothing. I sat down before my knees made that decision for me. The dishwasher hummed, loyal and oblivious. The kids called from upstairs. "Mom, can we have dessert?" And I turned my head toward the sound like I was underwater, as if voices behaved differently there. He took a step toward me. "Please," he said. "Let's—" "Get out," I said. "What?" "Get out," I repeated louder. "Take a bag, go to a hotel, go to hell, I don't care, but get out of this house right now before I say something I can't unsay in front of our children." He did that thing he does when he thinks charm can fix it, softening his voice, palms open. "We should talk." "We will talk when I can do it without breaking," I said, and my voice surprised me with its steadiness. "Not now." He stood there for a second, his mouth forming and unforming words. Then he nodded like someone accepting a verdict. He went upstairs, moving carefully, the way you move in the night so you don't wake a sleeping child. I listened to drawers open and close, the zipper of a duffel, the quiet domestic sound of a life scooped into a bag. The kids thundered down halfway through and crashed into me on the floor, all elbows and sugar hope. "Dessert?" the little one asked, wide eyes luminous. "2 strawberries each," I said, because rules are rafts. I kissed their heads. I smelled baby shampoo and pencil shavings and the faint trace of the park's mulch. He came down with the bag on his shoulder and kissed the tops of their heads too, without looking at me. Then the door opened and closed, and the house changed shape around the absence. After I folded them into bed, long story, 2 songs, 1 renegotiated consequence. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and held my own hands like they belonged to someone I was trying to comfort. I thought about the porch swing, about our matched mailboxes, about the paper banner still taped at a jaunty angle in the doorway with its cartoon 0. I thought about the woman who had stood in this kitchen 2 nights earlier feeling lucky. Somewhere outside, a train sighed, then committed to motion. I took my phone and opened a new note and wrote 3 sentences in a row, not because I needed a list, but because I needed to hear my own voice inside a decision. First, call a lawyer. Second, tell Claire not to come back here. Third, keep the kids' routine steady. Then I put the phone face down, got up, and washed the 2 strawberries left on the counter. I ate them with my fingers, one after the other, tasting the sour and the sweet. I rinsed the green stems down the disposal, turned the switch, and listened to the blades make something unrecognizable out of what it had been. When I finally went upstairs, the house was the same house, the hallway the same soft tunnel of nightlight. In the doorway of our bedroom, I stopped. His side of the bed was rucked, where he'd pulled the sheet, a ghost of a body. I stood there and thought, this is the night the story changes its tense. Then I crawled in on my side, turned my face to the cool part of the pillow, and stared at the blue numbers of the clock until they blurred and doubled and became meaningless. I didn't sleep, but I didn't break either, not yet. The morning after I kicked him out, the house behaved like nothing had happened. The coffee maker burbled. The cat threw herself at the pantry door because she somehow knows where the treats live. The kids padded down in footy pajamas, hair sticking up like startled dandelions. Routine put its gentle hands on my shoulders and turned me toward the next thing. Oatmeal, missing library book. Where are my sneakers? Please don't lick your bowl like a puppy. I packed lunches with the odd calm of someone performing on a stage set to look like her life. I wrote cheese, apple, note on a Post-it and stuck it to the counter just to make my brain trust me. When I buckled the kids into the car, the 7-year-old peered up at me. "Is Daddy still at the hotel?" he asked, like we'd planned a staycation without him. "He's staying at Grandma and Grandpa's for a little bit," I said, keeping my voice even. "Grown-up stuff to sort out. You're safe. We're okay." He nodded slowly. The little one asked if that meant 2 bedtime stories. I said yes. Sometimes truth comes in small, negotiable portions. Back home, I opened my laptop and typed family lawyer near me, with hands that trembled just enough to make the letters look like strangers. I clicked the firm with the simplest website, no gavel logos, no promises in gold script, just a page with clean fonts and the sentence, "We'll explain your options." I called. A receptionist with a voice like a warm cardigan offered me a consultation that afternoon. Before the appointment, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I checked the camera. Claire, in a sweatshirt and leggings, messy bun high, eyes already glossy. She had a Tupperware in her hands, as if sugar could be a bridge back across what she'd burned. I didn't open the door at first. We stood there separated by a rectangle of air and tempered glass, our fogged reflections nose to nose. She mouthed my name. I opened the door because I couldn't bear to carry this conversation into the neighborhood group chat by forcing it onto the driveway. "Please," she said, spilling into the foyer. Please let me talk. The smell of her laundry detergent hit me, citrus and something expensive. I stared at the Tupperware. Is that cake? She let out a half sob that wanted to be a laugh. Brownies. I didn't know what else to bring. You could have brought me back my life, I said. It came out flat, a fact. We sat at the kitchen table where we'd paid bills and planned baby showers, and once made sangria that stained the wood a faint, permanent pink. She started talking fast, the way you do when you're frightened of the silence that comes after confession. She said he had been complaining to her about the kids, the routine, feeling invisible. She said she told him to talk to me. She said he'd asked her whether I might ever be open to loosening the rules. She said she had laughed it off until she didn't. He told me you were considering it, she said, eyes locked on her own hands. He said you'd said maybe. I swallowed something sharp. He lied to both of us then. I know. She nodded too fast, hair loosening pins. I mean, I don't know. I know I was an adult and I made a decision and I chose the worst possible thing and... Her breath hitched. I hate myself. I will hate myself for this for a long time. Good, I said, because Grace was not available in my body. She told me about logistics I didn't ask for, the texts, the feeling that she was walking to an execution and still going, the hotel room that looked like any hotel room she'd ever seen, how she almost turned around in the elevator and didn't. It was only that one time, she said, once, and I knew even then I'd burned down the good parts of my life. You didn't just burn yours, I said. I know. She folded into herself, and for a surreal second I remembered curling her hair in the church bathroom on my wedding day while she stood on tiptoe to see the mirror. I pushed the memory away like steam. What were you thinking? The question came raw. I didn't expect an answer that would satisfy me. She gave a dozen that didn't. Loneliness, a breakup that had hollowed her out, the idiot romance of being wanted by someone who knew everything about you because he lived in the house where you kept your extra toothbrush. None of it felt like currency I could accept. Do you want me to say I'm a terrible person? She asked at one point, anger sparking under the tears, because of course anger shows up to defend despair. I am. I did a terrible thing. I leaned back, felt the chair tilt on two legs, let it drop. I want you to leave, I said, and I want you not to come back. She stared at me. I'd been gentle with her through breakups and bad dye jobs, and a move across town that nearly broke her finances, and a mother's diagnosis, and the week her radiator exploded and fried her laptop. We had decades of kindness between us, like a quilt. She looked at me like I'd just taken a knife to it. Okay, she whispered, if that's what you want. It is, I said. It's what I need. She set the Tupperware on the table and then, realizing the absurdity, tucked it back under her arm like a shield. I'm sorry, she said again, and the words felt worn out, a coin handled to smoothness. She walked to the door. On the threshold she turned. If you ever... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have a word for the world on the other side of this. Neither did I. When she was gone, the house exhaled. I pressed my hands to my eyes until stars bloomed. At 2, I drove to the law office. The sky had that washed-out Carolina blue that looks like it's been laundered too many times. The office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building shared with a CPA and a Pilates studio, beige carpet and framed watercolors of boats. The lawyer was a woman my age with neat hair and a calm voice. She asked for the story. I gave it to her in paragraphs, steady, unembellished, the way you hand a nurse your symptoms. She didn't wince or gasp. She made notes. You have options, she said. We can file for legal separation, begin discovery, request temporary orders for custody and support. You don't have to decide everything today. I breathed out. She explained the math of my life like a teacher at a whiteboard. Income disparity, years of marriage, custody norms in our county, the reasonable likelihood of spousal support for a limited period, child support tables. The vocabulary of rupture laid out in bullet points. She didn't minimize my pain. She turned it into a plan. "Document everything," she said gently. "Save the emails and texts. Start a log of communication. Keep it factual. Don't engage in long emotional exchanges over text. Keep the focus on the children." I nodded, wrote document, log on the first page of a new notebook, underlined twice. When I got back to the car, my hands shook so badly I had to sit for a minute, fingers gripping the steering wheel, forehead on the soft leather. It wasn't grief, exactly. It was the aftershock of stepping onto a new road you didn't intend to take and realizing there is actual ground under your feet. That night, he texted to ask if he could FaceTime the kids. I said yes, of course. He called, and their faces bloomed on the screen, gapped tooth and yogurt mustache, and they told him about the spelling test and how the neighbor's dog had eaten a sock. He asked me, when they ran to get the sock for visual aid, if we could talk later. "Tomorrow," I said. "I met with a lawyer." He blinked twice, the only tell I've ever reliably read. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay." I slept in fits. Each time I woke, the house sounded different in the dark, like it had rearranged itself by inches. At dawn, I went for a run I didn't plan, sneakers laced by muscle memory, the cul-de-sac rolling into a sidewalk that took me past magnolias and recycling bins, and a kid learning to wobble his balance bike. The air was damp, warm enough to feel like a hand on my back. Running hurt in the good way. Lungs burning, legs finding a rhythm that lived somewhere separate from thought. I answered 2 client emails when I got back, washed a load of towels, put the little one's stuffed fox in the dryer because she'd cried when it fell in the toilet. The domestic and the legal braided through the day. I put a folder on the counter labeled "Divorce" in black marker and tucked receipts and copies of statements inside. I called my parents, then his. My mother cried quietly. My father promised to take the kids on Saturday so I could breathe. His mother did that thing where she tried to distribute blame like hors d'oeuvres. I said, "With respect, this isn't a shared plate," and ended the call. He came by that evening at 6:30 with a bag of the kids' favorite yogurt and 3 avocados, like an apology could have a texture. He stood in the foyer, not crossing into the living room, as if afraid to trip an alarm. "I'll stay in the car until they're ready," he said, eyes on the family portrait over my shoulder. Beach 2019, all tan lines and smiles. He hadn't looked at me properly since the hotel thread, as if direct eye contact might drag us into a pit. "You can help with bath," I said, because the reality was we still had children and they were slipping like seal pups on the tile nightly. He looked startled, then grateful, then ashamed of being grateful for a bar of soap and a plastic cup. We moved around each other awkwardly, careful the way you are after an earthquake when the shelves could still tip. He kept his voice gentle, hands slow. He didn't try to touch me. After pajama choices were negotiated and the little one decided socks were important under footed pajamas, fine, sock the pajamas. He read 2 books in that soothing lower register he has, the one that always made me imagine him as an audiobook narrator in some other life. I stood in the doorway watching his hands turn the pages and felt the grief creak like a door in my chest. When the kids were down, we went to the kitchen like it was neutral ground. He leaned against the counter, palms flat. "I'm sorry," he said, and I could hear that he meant it the way a man means sorry when all the branches the apology could have landed on are already charred. "I am so sorry." "I know," I said. "It's not a bandage." He nodded. "I've booked a therapist," he said. "Maybe that's too late or not the point, but I need to look at how I got here." "Good," I said. It was not my job to applaud. He asked what the lawyer said. I told him the outlines, temporary custody schedule, financial disclosures that I'd be filing. He closed his eyes for a second, like bracing for a wave. "I don't want to fight you," he said. "I want to do right by the kids." "Then do," I said. "Show up, on time, sober, present, and don't ever put me in a position where I have to choose between protecting them and being fair to you." He nodded. "Can I see them tomorrow after school? We can do the park." "Yes," I said. 5 to 7. He glanced at the clock. at the magnet board with the week's menu and soccer practice times. I'll text when I'm on my way. When he left, the porch light made his shadow long across the grass. I stood there with my hand on the doorframe, the wood warm from the day, and thought of all the times I'd watched him go to work, or to the gym, or to dinner with friends. Leaving is a simple gesture until it isn't. By the end of the week, we had a rhythm I wouldn't have chosen but could survive. He took them for ice cream on Tuesday, returned them sugared and smiling. I met with the lawyer again and signed papers I never imagined needing to sign. He moved into a one-bedroom near the Greenway. I labeled the kids' overnight backpacks "Dad's in marker" like a summer camp trunk. I started a spreadsheet because spreadsheets make me feel like I still own time. On Friday, after I dropped them at school, I pulled into the church lot a mile away and cried so hard I had to put my forehead on the steering wheel. Then I wiped my face, went home, and made a list for the grocery store because we were out of laundry detergent, and bananas, and the snack crackers that stave off mutiny in the witching hour. I texted the group chat of moms from the class, not the one with Claire in it, a different constellation, and told them I'd appreciate any extra carpools this month. Within an hour, 3 had replied with emojis and time slots, and 1 had quietly Venmo'd me $50 for pizza night. On Sunday, my parents cooked a pot roast and fed us until the kids got sleepy and heavy and easy. My mother brushed my hair on the couch the way she did when I was 11 and read Little Women until the print blurred. My father washed the dishes loudly, angrily, in the way of a man who wants to fix and can't. He dried his hands and put them on my shoulders. "You don't have to be brave every hour," he said. "Just the next one." That night, when the house was finally quiet, I sat at the kitchen table with the divorce folder open and the kids' art spread like a colorful tide. I wrote a new list, not of facts, but of vows. Small, mostly, like stones in a pocket. Sleep, drink water. Answer only the necessary texts. Don't stalk anyone's photos. Say yes when someone offers help. Say no when your body says no. Laugh at the cat. Buy the good coffee. I got up, made tea, and took it out to the porch swing I swore we'd use every evening. The wood was cool through my shorts. A moth threw itself at the light, then vanished, learned. Somewhere down the street, someone spun a grill brush across metal. Life has a way of continuing exactly the same and completely changed. I rocked, sipped, listened to the dark breathe. A train muttered far off. The swing creaked. My heart creaked too, loosening nails, making room. Inside, on the counter, my notebook lay open where I'd left it. On the top line I'd written, "Tomorrow, call the mediator." On the next, "Remember, this isn't the end of you." The pages rustled when the AC kicked on. I left them there on purpose, as if the whole house could read. The first month after filing was a blur of logistics and ache. Separation isn't one big event. It's 1,000 small, jagged ones. The bank account that used to say joint now said pending. The mailbox filled with envelopes in his name and mine, but not ours. Even the coffee mugs in the dishwasher felt like strangers in the same rack. Mediation happened in a conference room at a downtown law firm with bad art on the walls. There was a pitcher of water, a box of tissues no one wanted to touch first, and a round table big enough for distance. He sat across from me, tie a little crooked, eyes fixed on a spot over my left shoulder. The mediator, a patient woman with a legal pad, explained how we'd go one topic at a time: custody, finances, property. We were polite because the children's future sat invisibly between us like a fragile vase. We hammered out a schedule: alternating weekends, Wednesdays for dinner, phone calls every night before bed. We agreed on child support and on splitting medical costs. Each time he said yes or I agree, I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. I answered quietly, my own exhaustion mirrored back. When we left, we both looked like people who'd spent the day in an airport. Hollow, polite, traveling in opposite directions. Back at home, the kids adjusted in the way kids do. Fast, uneven, heartbreakingly matter-of-fact. They started calling his apartment Dad's house and ours home without me prompting. They drew 2 kitchens in their crayon family pictures. Sometimes the little one asked if I would ever get a dad house too, and I would smile and say, "We're good here for now." I built routines like scaffolding: morning run, school drop-off, work hours, snacks, bath, bedtime stories. On days without the kids, I'd write for clients in coffee shops until my laptop battery died, then walk the greenway just to see the water move. I started therapy on Thursdays, the hour carved out like a secret room. My therapist helped me untangle the snarl of guilt, anger, and the tiny threads of relief I was ashamed to name. "You don't have to be a saint to be a good mother," she said once. I wrote it on a Post-it and stuck it above my desk. There were setbacks. Nights when the kids came back cranky and sugar-spiked and I lost my patience. Mornings when I scrolled his new social media profile against my better judgment. A mediation session where we argued over a trivial holiday, and I cried in the parking lot afterward. Healing, I learned, isn't a staircase, but a spiral. Sometimes you circle back past the same view, but a little higher up. And there were small victories. The day I realized I'd gone an entire afternoon without thinking about them together in that hotel room. The morning my oldest laughed so hard at breakfast, milk came out his nose, and my first reaction was to laugh with him instead of noticing the empty chair. The email from a client doubling my retainer. The first night I sat on the porch swing after bedtime and felt not just tired, but peaceful. Grandma came up often, bringing her quiet steadiness. She'd fold laundry while I cooked, slip cash for something sweet into the kids' pockets, and tell me stories about surviving hard seasons. "You keep putting one foot down," she'd say, "and pretty soon you've crossed the street." By spring, the calendar on the fridge was a patchwork of school events, his pickup times, my deadlines, and one new thing: a weekend trip to Asheville, just for me and the kids. We hiked a trail to a waterfall, ate pancakes bigger than our plates, and built a blanket fort in the hotel room. When they fell asleep under the fort, faces soft and open, I sat on the edge of the bed and realized I wasn't waiting for my old life to come back anymore. I was living a new one. Driving home the next day, the mountains slipping into the rear view, the little one asked if this meant we were all better now. I said, "We're getting better. That's different." He nodded solemnly, then asked if we could have pancakes for dinner. When we pulled into our driveway, the porch swing creaked in the breeze. I unlocked the door, carried in the overnight bag, and felt the house exhale around us. It wasn't whole yet. Neither were we, but it was ours. By the summer after the separation, the ache had dulled enough for me to hear myself think. The kids and I had a rhythm now. School, work, handoffs with their dad, small rituals that stitched our days together. At night, after they were asleep, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my laptop and the hum of the refrigerator and work. Not because I had to fill every hour, but because work was the one part of my life that still felt like it grew when I fed it. Clients kept coming. Word of mouth and a few articles I'd written about freelancing brought new contracts. A parenting site, a small tech company, a nonprofit. The invoices grew larger, the gaps between them smaller. I stopped thinking of myself as someone trying to make it, and started introducing myself at school events as a writer. The first time I did it, I waited for someone to look surprised. No one did. On nights without the kids, I joined a yoga class at the community center. The first few classes I shook through every pose, my mind racing, but by the third week I could hold tree pose without wobbling. Standing there, arms lifted, staring at a point on the wall, I felt a tiny flicker of balance return, not just in my body, but in my life. I made a list of small things I wanted to do, but had always postponed. Repaint the living room, plant tomatoes, take the kids camping, go hear live music again. One by one I ticked them off. The walls went a soft gray. The tomato plants took over a corner of the yard. The kids slept under the stars at a state park, sticky with marshmallow. On a kid-free Saturday, I went to a blues club with 2 women from my yoga class, felt bass in my ribs, and laughed until my cheeks hurt. Therapy helped too. Each week, my therapist and I unpacked another box, my reflex to apologize for everything, the shame that flared when people offered help, the habit of putting myself last. "You're not just surviving anymore," she said one Wednesday. "You're building." I wrote the word in my notebook, building. Even the co-parenting began to settle. He showed up for his days, mostly on time. The kids started telling stories about Dad's house without tension. Sometimes he and I exchanged only a few factual words at pickups. Sometimes he managed a quiet thank you when I sent extra clothes or school papers. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was functional. By autumn, when the leaves along the greenway flamed red and gold, I realized I'd gone whole days without replaying the night of the hotel. Instead, I was planning a weekend trip to the coast, a bigger contract with a magazine, an emergency fund that finally had 3 months of expenses. I bought a secondhand bike and rode with the kids on Sunday afternoons. We discovered a bakery that did kids' bake classes, and every Thursday they came home with flour on their noses and loaves they were absurdly proud of. One evening, sitting on the porch swing while they played in the yard, I opened my laptop and filled out an application for a writing fellowship in New York I'd once thought was for real writers. I attached clips, hit send, and sat there with the glow of the screen on my knees, feeling not like an imposter, but like someone taking a step. The house was still the same small house. The porch swing still creaked, but the air around me felt different. Not empty, not waiting, but spacious. Space to write, space to heal, space to decide who I wanted to be next. The email came on a rainy Tuesday when I was cleaning peanut butter fingerprints off the fridge. Subject line, "Congratulations, Fellowship Award." For a second I thought it was spam. Then I opened it and had to sit down on the kitchen floor, wet sponge still in my hand. I'd been chosen for the Writing Fellowship in New York, a month of paid time to work on my own book project, plus mentorship and a small grant. The kids were at school, the cat was asleep on a pile of laundry, and I sat there with my knees pulled up, laughing and crying into my sleeve. It wasn't just a line on a resume. It was someone outside my little circle saying, "We see you, we believe you." The logistics were complicated. I arranged for my parents to help with the kids, coordinated with their dad about extended custody, packed my notebooks and my laptop. Grandma pressed a 20 into my palm at the train station, just like she had years ago. "For something sweet just for you," she said. New York in November smelled like roasted nuts and wet concrete. The fellowship gave me a desk in a loft space with huge windows and a radiator that hissed like a living thing. Around me were other writers, poets, journalists, novelists, each hunched over their own projects. The first morning I sat down, opened a blank document, and wrote, Chapter 1: How You Lose a Marriage and Find a Life. The words came slow but steady. By the end of the month, I had 50 pages. When I came home, the kids met me at the station holding a cardboard sign that said, "Welcome home, Mom," with glitter glue. My oldest whispered, "Did you write your book?" I said, "I started," and he grinned like that was enough. Work grew from there. The fellowship led to new clients, then to speaking gigs about freelancing and resilience. I started teaching an online class for other parents who wanted to build writing careers from home. My income surpassed what my husband and I had earned together. For the first time in years, I didn't just pay bills, I saved. Even my co-parenting relationship began to shift. He was still at his apartment, still working his finance job, but the sharpness between us dulled. We communicated mostly by text about pickups and homework, but once at a school concert he leaned over and said quietly, "You're doing a good job with them." I nodded. It wasn't an apology, but it was a thread of civility, and I took it. One Friday night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the porch swing with a cup of tea and read through the fellowship pages. The manuscript wasn't finished, but it was real. I could see a shape forming. Not a revenge story, but a survival one. My survival. Our survival. I thought about the woman who had once sat on this same swing, numb from betrayal, making lists of bills and bedtime schedules. She had no idea she would be here, calmer, stronger, building a life from her own words. I wanted to go back and tell her, "Hold on, it gets better. You get better." A breeze lifted the pages, ruffling them like feathers. I held them down with my palm and breathed in the cool night air. For the first time, the future didn't feel like something to fear or endure. It felt like something I was already walking toward, step by deliberate step. By the time the book manuscript was finished, 2 full years had passed since the night in the kitchen when he'd asked for a hall pass. In the beginning, I used to measure time by before and after. Now the event sat somewhere behind me, like a landmark you can see in the distance, but no longer need to navigate by. The kids were taller, legs like saplings, voices changing. They still called our place home without thinking, still climbed into my bed on Saturday mornings with cold toes and crumbly toast. They had their rhythm with their dad, too. Wednesdays for dinner, every other weekend at his apartment near the Greenway. They stopped asking when we'd be a family again and started telling me about science projects and inside jokes from his house. That was its own kind of healing. My work had become my calling. The fellowship led to a book deal. The book led to speaking invitations at conferences and community centers. I stood at podiums and told rooms full of strangers, "You are not the villain in someone else's story," and watched their faces change as if a window had opened. Sometimes I'd see a woman in the 3rd row with a hand pressed to her mouth, and I'd think, "I know you. I was you." At home, the porch swing had become our ritual. We'd sit out there after dinner, the kids doing homework at the table, me with a cup of mint tea. Sometimes Grandma visited, still steady as a rock, still bringing chili and hummingbirds for the calendar. She'd pat my knee and say, "Seatbelt out of habit," and we'd both laugh. The phrase had become our shorthand for safety, for "You're buckled in, you're okay." He and I eventually sat down in a quiet coffee shop and signed the final papers. No drama, no slam doors, just 2 people finishing a chapter they'd once promised would never end. He apologized again, this time without excuses. I listened, not because I needed to hear it, but because it was his work to do. We talked about the kids, about schedules, about how to handle holidays. We didn't talk about the past. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was an end. The day the divorce decree arrived in the mail, I made pancakes for dinner, like the kids had asked for on that trip to Asheville. We ate at the table with the lopsided cake stand and the crayons still scattered from homework. Afterward, I sat on the porch swing with my laptop and opened a new document. The cursor blinked. Patient. I typed, "This is not a story about loss. This is a story about building." I looked around my little house. The gray walls I'd painted myself, the tomato plants sprawling in the yard, the stack of manuscripts on the counter. The life I had now wasn't the one I'd planned, but it was mine, built brick by brick out of choices, hard days, and small joys. The kids came out with their ice cream bowls, climbed up beside me. "Are you done with your book?" my youngest asked. "I'm done with the first one," I said. "Maybe I'll write another." "What will it be about?" my oldest asked. I smiled. "About what happens after you think the story is over." They leaned against me, sticky and warm, and the swing creaked under our combined weight. The sky over the cul-de-sac turned a soft Carolina pink. For a moment, everything felt both ordinary and brand new. I took a deep breath and thought of the girl who once sat on this swing, making lists to survive. I wanted to tell her, "You're not just surviving anymore. You're living." And for the first time in years, I believed it. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect,